Welcome to Dear Jane. I'm Scott Baker, and she is Marcy Little. Marcy, how are you?
I'm great.
We're just getting back from the March for Life at this recording. It was a very, very good time. Very exciting. We heard from the vice president even.
I know. That was awesome. It was his first official appearance after becoming VP. It was just a very exciting week. You know, President Trump had issued the pardons for the 23 peaceful pro-life activists that were wrongfully imprisoned under the FACE Act, under Joe Biden's weaponized DOJ. You can tell how I feel about that by all those words that I just used. But there was just I've been to probably 7 or 8 marches at this point, and there's different kind of energy levels at different marches depending on what else is going on, and just felt like a high energy, very hopeful march this year.
Yep. It's always a good time just to be surrounded with so many people to remind us that we're not alone. There are millions of people who agree with us on this very, very important issue. So that was fantastic. We've got a great episode today. I cannot wait to dig into this. As you know, we've dug into the election results. Anybody who follows pro-life issues at all knows that the pro-life side finally won 3 states this past fall. We won in Florida, we won in South Dakota, and we won in Nebraska. And Nebraska is really, really unique. And we thought it was worth setting aside some time to really dig into what happened there, what made Nebraska unique, why they were able to pull it off. And basically, the long and short of it is they put up 2 competing measures, or I should say there were 2 competing measures for voters to decide. One was put up by the pro-abortion side, their typical unlimited abortion, unrestricted, anything goes. But then the pro-life side put up their own ballot initiative, and it was, there's a lot of people. This idea has been discussed for a while, but a lot of us said, I don't know. That's going to strain your resources. That's going to muddy the waters. Are you a fan of that approach?
I was skeptical. I wasn't sure how it was going to work. Big question for me was resources. Voters are going to be confused what they're supposed to vote for. The other side is always confusing in their language. Now it feels like you have to, it's going to be like double your resources, right? You have to convince people to vote yes on this one and no on this one. The other side's going to be making everybody confused about everything. Are people just going to skip those because they're not sure what's going on? There were just a lot of questions, and no state had attempted this before. But it's really fascinating to dig in. People are going to hear from one of the architects of this whole scheme in today's conversation, just to kind of peel back the layers of what worked, why it worked. That is really fascinating to me.
Yeah, I mean, people have to understand how difficult, even if there's just one ballot initiative, how difficult it is to have people understand if they're voting yes or no.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Geez, am I voting for this or against this? We hear that all the time, right? And that's if you just have one. If you have competing ones, you're like, am I voting yes on this? No on what? I mean, I was really, really skeptical, to be honest. But then we have this visit with Nate Grasz from Nebraska Family Alliance. We're going to hear from him today. And we're going to dig into it. Why did it work? What's the upside? So looking forward to that. But first, let's hear from our sponsor, Choose Life Marketing.
Choose Life Marketing exists to provide the marketing resources and services that you need to successfully get out the word about your pro-life organization. So whether you are a pregnancy help center trying to reach more abortion-minded women with the truth about life and their unplanned pregnancy and their unborn baby, or maybe you are an adoption agency, maternity home, whether you need help with fundraising or full service marketing support, Choose Life Marketing is here to help. They'll put together the right strategy and plan for your organization to grow your organization, to get the word out to donors and the people that you're trying to reach. So check out our friends at Choose Life Marketing, chooselifemarketing.com to get started today.
You know what we forgot to do?
What?
Hit that subscribe and all those things.
Follow,
Oh
subscribe,
yeah.
hit the
What
button,
else?
ring the bell. We're
Ring the
on
bell.
Spotify. Will you ring the notification bell on YouTube so that you never miss an episode?
Okay.
'Cause we are
Ring
on
the bell.
YouTube. So
Hit the follow. Do all the things that the
all the
kids
things.
do.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube is where you can find the full episodes. You should also follow us on social media, though.
Oh yeah.
Facebook, Instagram, all those fun
On the
things.
Insta. You know, the kids, we like to say Insta.
Is that what the kids are saying? The Insta?
Yeah. Yeah. Just follow us on Insta or X
X?
or, all the places where the cool kids hang out. That's where you find it. Dear Jane Podcast. You have to search that. Dear Jane Podcast is where you'll find it. So Nate Grasz from Nebraska Family Alliance joins us today. What did they do well and why were they able to win in Nebraska? We dig in today on Dear Jane. Nate, as we look at some of the pro-life victories this last fall, obviously Nebraska was a really big victory, one of the three. But y'all did it a different way, and we want to dig into that just a little bit. Sort of fascinating to me on how Nebraska was able to pull off their win. First, sort of give us a review, if you will, of the two different ballot measures that were before voters in Nebraska.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Nebraska really was an important test case for the entire country on how we move forward on this issue and how we can not only combat but defeat and find success in stopping where the abortion industry is trying to go and protecting life. And so in Nebraska, it really starts with recognizing where we were at. So in Nebraska, we had a 12-week abortion law, prohibiting abortion after 12 weeks with exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. That previously had been at 20 weeks. We had tried to go down to a heartbeat bill, which failed unexpectedly by one vote in our legislature, but we were able to move our law to 12 weeks. And so in response to that, Planned Parenthood and the National Abortion Lobby, similar to other states, launched a constitutional amendment to try to create a right to abortion all the way up until birth in the Nebraska Constitution. This became known as Initiative 439. So in response to this, Nebraska Family Alliance and other pro-life organizations, we were looking at what had been happening up to this point around the country. And seeing the success that the abortion industry was finding on these ballot initiatives, even in red states, and through a lot of prayer and hard conversations, we came to the conclusion that we had to do something different or we were going to get the same result even in Nebraska. And so ultimately, that led us to helping launch our own ballot initiative to proactively counter what the abortion industry was doing. And this became Initiative 434, the Protect Women and Children Initiative, which in essence took our existing 12-week law and moved it into our state constitution as a floor of constitutional protection. So what it said was unborn children have to be protected from abortion in the second and third trimester with those same exceptions under our existing 12-week law. And so this was important that we were saying we're not going to allow our state to go the other direction on this. We're going to hold the line and still keep the door open for us to add greater protections in the future. And we felt that was going to give us the best opportunity by giving people an opportunity not just to vote no to what Planned Parenthood was doing, but to vote yes to what we were proposing and to help protect women and children.
So what would have happened if both sort of walk us through the mindset if both had passed or before? I mean, we know the result, but beforehand we don't know if this is going to work. What would have happened, or what were some of the possible outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, this had never been tried before, where you had two competing initiatives on the same issue, both on the ballot. And so that was our most common question was, can they both pass, and what happens if they both pass? And yeah, it's never happened before in Nebraska, but we do have a provision in our Constitution. If you have two constitutional amendments that are on the ballot that both pass. In Nebraska, you just need a simple 50% majority of those voting on the initiative to vote for it. If you have two initiatives that are in conflict that both pass, it would be the one that received more votes that would take effect and become the law of the land. And so it was a situation we had never had before. But I think what was so important by having our own pro-life initiative, it gave us something that we could actively compare and contrast with what Planned Parenthood was proposing. It showed people that, hey, there's a different option on the ballot that's a better option that will protect life. It'll keep our common sense laws in place that protect women from the harms of abortion, that protect parental rights, and that allows our state to continue to grow a culture of life.
I like that strategy, and obviously it worked because it allows you to reach kind of those people who are in the middle. They're not the diehards either way, but it allows you to kind of expose the other side's agenda. Like they want unfettered abortion, no restrictions, no safety measures, nothing. So you kind of gave other people that maybe they're not 100% pro-life, or maybe they're not life begins at conception kind of people, gives them an alternative to vote on, which I think is really smart and strategic and something that other states can look into. I'm curious if you had a hard time pulling together a strong pro-life coalition to work with you. Like, was that a hard pill to swallow to say, we're gonna we're gonna put 12 weeks in the Constitution, and kind of how did you mitigate that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the most important things that happened here in Nebraska is that we had a really strong, unified coalition between our organization, the Family Policy Council for Nebraska at NFA, as well as the Nebraska Catholic Conference, Nebraska Right to Life, SBA Pro-Life America. We were all united from the beginning. We've had a great working relationship, and I think that unity, that trust, was really critical. But yeah, it was not an easy decision. Just knowing that this was going to have to be really different, but we were very intentional and spent a lot of time crafting the language of our initiative to ensure that it would accomplish what we wanted, which was creating a floor or a minimum level of constitutional protection and not a maximum. So, in other words, our state legislature still has the full ability and authority to pass better, stronger laws. The only thing that happens is we're putting up a wall in our Constitution that says you can't go the other way. You can't become less restrictive. So we worked with some of the best pro-life attorneys locally and nationally to help us with that, and ultimately we were able to put forward an initiative that can not only be competitive and give people, as you mentioned, who are kind of in the middle on this issue, who we need a better choice, but it still allows us to continue working to save more lives and see more women and children protected.
One of the concerns, I think, on the front end when people have considered this two or competing ballot approach, we know that the other side likes to muddy the waters. They like to lie, they like to deceive, distract, all those things. And so the thought was, well, geez, if we have two different competing things, that'll just make it even worse. Voters will just have a really hard time. Am I voting for this or against that? What was your approach on how to address that?
Yeah. So again, I mean, we knew that we needed to change the binary choice that voters were being given. We even looked at, just here historically in Nebraska, people, and I think we see this all over the country, but people have a propensity to vote yes to things that are on their ballot as just sort of a natural tendency. And again, the people behind the initiatives can, write them in very favorable terms. They can spend a lot of money on advertisements, oftentimes, as you mentioned, Scott, very misleading, deceptive advertisements. And so we knew we needed to put something forward that would make the other side have to work a lot harder, have to explain why our current 12-week law wasn't good enough, and they needed to go all the way until birth. And so by doing that, we were able to draw a really sharp contrast, but we were also able to really engage with thousands of voters across the state very early on, because we didn't just have to wait until the ballot was finalized right before the election. we got to go out and help collect signatures, to put our initiative on the ballot. And so we were having these conversations and engaging with voters and getting them invested much earlier on, in the spring and in the summer leading into the election. And that really helped with that education gap that exists on this issue, and I think was another really critical element of why we were able to find success here.
Do you think there are things that are unique maybe to the Nebraska ballot initiative process that made this more likely to succeed there? Or do you think there are like things that other states, lessons that other states could take from this and just kind of apply straight to their ballot initiative fight? Because we know this isn't going away. The other side's coming for all 50 states. So is this something that would be pretty easy to replicate in other states, or were there some things more unique maybe to Nebraska that made it easier to pull off there?
Yeah, I think it's some of both. I think there were some unique things here, but I also think there are some general principles and strategies that other states can look at and implement. And we've been having a lot of conversations with interested people from other states trying to figure out, how they can try to replicate what we did in Nebraska. Because like we were just talking about, we saw that in Nebraska, going into the 2024 election, the last 12 initiatives on the ballot had all passed previously. It was very rare in Nebraska to see an initiative fail. And we were seeing that on this issue specifically around the country. And so I think what we found, what we showed, is that while the voting population isn't yet where we're at on this issue or where we want to be, and I think that's literally 50 years of Roe v. Wade and just it being ingrained into the public psyche that abortion is a human right, things like that. There's a lot of work that we have to do to undo that and to win more hearts and minds on this issue. But the majority of voters are closer to where we're at on this issue than where the abortion lobby wants to go with no limits, no restrictions. And so if you can find ways to highlight these common sense protections, that the majority of voters agree with and believe that are common sense, that we should have, parental consent and notification for minors. There should be informed consent for women before an abortion is performed. There should be these health and safety protections. And yeah, we probably, don't need elective abortion, up until birth. That's way too extreme. When you can highlight those differences, when you can give people something they can vote for and not just against, you change the dynamic, and you give yourself, I think, the best opportunity to not only defeat what the abortion industry was trying to do, but also protect the progress that we've been able to make on this issue and allow us to continue to build on that progress to see more lives cherished and protected.
You said something really intriguing there, and I like the way you put it. You make the competing amendments made the other side work harder. And you're exactly right, because we know that they like to set up a false choice, that it's about freedom or not, and so you basically they had to abandon that old tried and true method that they like and messaging that they like. And so you took that off the table. That's really fascinating. Actually, I hadn't thought of that approach. I mean, I was so concerned about, especially in a presidential cycle, right? There's so many messages. It's so easy for especially ballot issues and oftentimes to get caught up in, it's hard to cut through the clutter, right? With all the political messages and everything else. And then especially something like this, voters might be confused, but man, I can really see the benefits of making them actually make their case. That's really fascinating. So is this something you would recommend for other states? Are you saying, yep, this is the way to go? Should we replicate this as a movement?
Yeah, absolutely. That was really key. And we know that each state is unique and has their unique challenges and political realities. But I think it's still true that when you can put something out there, like we talked about, to make the other side have to abandon the strategy that they had been using very successfully, when you make them have to work harder, when you can give people a different choice on the ballot, it completely changes that dynamic in a way that we can start to control some of that messaging and take back some of that ground that's been lost.
How did the other side allocate their resources when it came to messaging? Was it a pro 439, anti 434? How did they sort of try to push back?
Yeah, and that's the other thing is they now can't just spend their time saying whatever they want, telling people you need to vote for this initiative because it's pro women or pro human, whatever, all those talking points they use, because now there's something different out there that people are hearing about that they know is probably closer to where the majority of voters are at, and so I think that made it difficult for them because it caught them off guard. It required them to change their approach and their strategy, and so all of a sudden that shifted things in our favor. And I think they knew that if they could be successful in Nebraska, if they could create a right to abortion until birth in Nebraska, they could do it anywhere. And so that's what we put everything we had into stopping their initiative, but we also knew that, as you said, Marcy, this isn't going away. They're going to be back. So even if we were able to defeat their initiative, they're just going to come back, in a couple years and try again, probably with more resources, maybe in a less favorable election cycle for us. So if we can, beat them to the punch, if we can get our own, constitutional protections there first, that makes it much, much harder for them to try to undo in the future.
Yeah, it's such a smart strategy. The more I hear it, the more I'm like, oh, I wish. I think too, for states that do just have a simple majority to pass these ballot initiatives, I look at states like Florida, and it's like, okay, the other side faced a steeper battle, needing to get 60%, but a lot of states don't have that. It is a simple 51. So I think that's really intriguing. How are you guys? I'm assuming you're expecting the other side to come back and pick up the fight again. Kind of, how are you guys thinking about that? How are you preparing for it? What do you think they would try to do? Talk us through future fights that you're anticipating.
Yeah, for sure. I think it puts the other side in a really interesting position now, where we do have this floor of protection for unborn children in our Constitution for the first time in history that didn't exist before, and voters affirmed those protections, and so that really changes things for them. So we're kind of waiting to see what they decide to come back with or not come back with. But the good news is that we now have that wall of protection that we can build off of that prevents us from going the other direction, and it gives us the ability to continue working to not just win these policy debates, but continuing to help change culture, to help find and improve ways to encourage moms and families to choose life and improve our safety net and options for them, while continuing to educate on what our laws actually do and don't allow, and why what the abortion industry is advocating for is so extreme, and so far away from what we believe Nebraskans really care about, which is valuing and loving both women and their children, born and unborn. And so we're excited to get to build off of the success that we had here, and hopefully that will be a helpful model for the rest of the state going forward.
What
Yeah.
kind of church engagement did you have? I mean, were faith organizations as engaged or involved as you would have hoped?
Yeah, it was huge. I mean, we knew going into this that if the church did not engage, we would lose on this issue, and that was one of our key objectives for our organization, was reaching into churches, meeting with pastors and faith leaders, getting them engaged, and the response was really remarkable. I think the faith community here really recognized what was at stake. The first time abortion being directly on the ballot, and that if 439, the pro-abortion initiative, have gone through, we would not only lose all of our existing pro-life laws that save hundreds of lives every year, but because it would be in the Constitution as a right, we would also lose the ability to come back and try to work to pass pro-life laws. And so the stakes couldn't have been higher. And we were really encouraged by the pastors and faith leaders here who stepped up to help educate their congregations, to help shepherd people in the truth. And it was sort of like a domino effect. The more churches and pastors that started speaking out, it just really spread, and it made a huge difference in the outcome of the vote.
How did you respond to, and maybe there weren't as many, I know one of the challenges for other pro-life advocacy groups in different states is pastors or other church leaders, I guess, being afraid of being too political or, overstepping those 501c3 bounds. How did you guys overcome that to kind of bring them into your coalition?
Yeah, that was huge. And, something we really honed in on was that this is not a political issue. This is a moral issue, and this is a biblical issue. This is about how we treat the innocent and the most vulnerable among us. This is about, the type of state that we're going to have for our children and grandchildren, and whether or not we can even have the ability to protect innocent children. And so I think when you help people start to, reframe the conversation that, yes, there's going to be a vote. It's on the ballot, but we have a role. We have a responsibility, to be engaged with what's happening in government and culture, and to be a voice for the voiceless. And if the church, if believers can't do that, then who's going to? And we know that there are consequences sometimes for speaking out on these issues. Not everyone will like it, but there's also consequences to not speaking out. And those consequences, life and death, right, is what we're talking about, are far greater than, possibly offending someone, but really focusing on, our calling and our responsibility to be a light and to help represent the truth, and not putting this in that political label when really it's a moral issue.
I tell you what, Nate, you've given us a lot to think about because I'll be honest with you. Once upon a time, and I've been involved in politics for a while, I would have said, I trust people, Americans are smart, they're going to do the right thing. I'll admit that trust has started to wane over the years a little bit, but then especially when you consider just how effectively the other side lies in this issue specifically. So my concern has always been, we've got an uphill battle to get the truth in front of these folks anyways. And so the easier, more direct we can make that messaging, probably the better. So this goes against that conventional wisdom. But man, you make a heck of a case for it. Are you an evangelist? You could be a political evangelist
Well, I think we have to care more about the truth than the abortion industry cares about increasing their bottom line. It should be up to the people in our states to help shape the laws in our respective states, and not the national abortion lobby. But again, we know that this is an issue that we have to lead on. These are the issues that matter most, and ultimately what people are just searching for and hungry for is truth, and people having the courage and the conviction to stand up for what's right. And that's contagious. In a world full of lies, the bravest thing we can do is to tell the truth. And every time that we stand up for life and tell the truth about this issue, we are proclaiming the truth, and helping to create a better state and nation for those who are depending on our faithfulness today.
nebraska-family-alliance.org if you want to see some of the great work that Nate and his crew are doing there in Nebraska. And if you want to pick his brain even more, I'm sure he would love to hear from you. You can
Anytime.
I mean, it really is a fascinating case study, and it's worth, I think, and this is why we wanted to have you on. I think it's worth us as a movement considering, do we want to replicate this? And it's hard to argue with success. So It's just really, really good to think about. Nate, appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us here today.
Yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate the conversation and all the awesome work you guys are doing to help protect life and continue to get the message and the truth out there on this issue and change hearts and minds. So thank you guys for what you're doing.
All right. Thanks, Nate. Thanks again for listening to Dear Jane.
You can follow along every day on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and X. And make sure you also are subscribed so you never miss an episode on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. Ring that bell so you're notified and you never miss an episode.